I'm Teresa. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Happy Sunday to everyone that is hearing this within the sound of my voice. If you are watching the upload later, this was recorded on Sunday, January 17th of 2026. So I hope everyone is having a wonderful day today. And we're going to give a few minutes for some folks to get in here on the live stream and then we'll get started. I was having this morning I was trying to figure out what was I going to talk about for a Sunday message I was on TikTok, but I woke up this morning, y'all, and I was hearing radical leftist. Thinking like, yes, Yeshua was a radical leftist. Hey, Lisa Hitch, welcome, welcome. And I had to stop and think about that for a minute, but honestly, it is true. Yeshua was pretty much, without the violence part today, what we call radical leftists have just lost their minds. They done gone way off on the deep end. But Yeshua was basically a leftist, you know? And then I got to thinking about some of the things, several scriptures ran through my mind. And then I was led to some really interesting information. I had queued up some videos anyway, and I just spent some time in my head with those. And actually, I created a new playlist today that is called Yeshua's Teachings, and I highly, highly encourage you to go and check out that playlist because there are other people's videos, but they have some really good information. And one of them is talking about from the Gnostic Gospels, 3 words that you can help intone in the Aramaic to help enhance like your manifestations and stuff. Super interesting videos. How's everybody doing today on this beautiful Sunday? We're supposed to be having some kind of a little winter storm coming up here shortly. So I'm like, oh goodness, I don't know. Maybe even a little bit of snow. Georgia don't get a whole lot of snow anyway, but we're supposed to be getting a little bit soon. So we're going to see how that goes. You doing all right, Miss Lisa? Trying to stay warm, yeah. Hey, Damazing, welcome. Or JD Amazing. That if I could read, I'd be dangerous, right? Hey, JD, welcome, welcome, and happy Sunday to you. No, you're not. Don't come in here with. You know what? I forgot to do what I'm supposed to do. Let me make this for There we go. Get that out the way right bright and early. Mm-mm-mm. They get me with that coming in here talking about they gonna donate this, they gonna give that. Cause guess what? If you was planning on donating $500, my coffee link is on my about page and on the front page of my channel. If you were planning on donating $500, you'd have did it. So don't come in here with foolishness today. But yeah, y'all. One of the things that was on after I heard was contemplating Yeshua being a radical leftist. It brought me back to some of his teachings when he was talking about the kingdom of heaven being within you. And I don't think a lot of people really they brush aside that meaning because of the meanings that the church has put on things. But Yeshua was very serious about that, and that was one of the videos that I posted to that playlist. Yeshua's teachings was talking about the left hand path and how it genuinely, like, you connecting the energy of your left hand to the heart chakra brings you in touch with the monad. And they were saying how, like, even the powers that be, that's one of the things for centuries we lived in a we still live in a right hand based world, but it was so bad at one point that they would punish left-handed children. I can remember, I mean, when I was just entering school, it was starting to become more accepted, but I remember people telling horror stories, especially if they were in like Catholic school and stuff, of getting their hands spanked with a ruler if they tried to use their left hand. They were only allowed to use the right hand. And I'm like, but it's because our left hand connects and energizes a different way. It activates our right brain, which allows us to stimulate the monad. And it was also talking about how one of them mentioned in the Gospel of Thomas and like the Gospel of Philip. I think it was in the Gospel of Philip where it talks about or in the Gospel of Thomas, excuse me, where it says if you are waiting for your reward, you're waiting for your reward after, I'm paraphrasing, but after you leave this earth, if you're waiting for your reward, you'll get nothing. That basically you have to achieve resurrection here while you're physically embodied in this physical avatar on this earth, which is what Yeshua did by becoming Christos. They have completely hidden or basically tamped down the meaning of the word Christ. We use Jesus Christ all the time, but people don't understand what that means. Yeshua became Christ in this lifetime. And he told us to do the same thing. He said, greater things have I done than I have done, will you do? And he invited us, even in some of the other teachings through the apocryphal texts and the Essene Gospel of Peace and things like that, he gave us clues, and not even clues, direct instructions on things to do to help us do that. And one of the things is one of the scriptures that a lot of translations have even taken out of the scriptures. Was it Matthew 17:21, where he says this kind can only go through prayer and fasting. And he was talking about particularly stubborn entities or demons. And truthfully, in that context, demons could be other than just the entities too. Anything that's really slowing you down on your spiritual path, that fasting was the way to release those things and be able to get to that point. And then the other thing that I was thinking about was when he was talking about how his ministry was basically, he boiled it down to two things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then love your neighbor as yourself. So he was saying all of this stuff with the Mosaic law and this and that if we would do those two things, that would basically fulfill all the law and the prophets. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But as far as, and I wonder why, well, Yeshua taught fasting, taught fasting, but that helps in that where it talks about we war not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. And basically it was part of it shores up the armor of God, you know? But anywho, what are we going to talk about today, y'all? Are we going back into Exodus today? That's where we left off the other day. I think we were at Exodus. We were getting ready to go into when they came out of Egypt. Yeah, we went through all the 10 plagues and then the instructions for the Passover meal and then the Exodus. And then, well, we got up to the point where they were about to cross the Red Sea, and they did some more sorcery there with the parting of the Red Sea and all that good stuff. And he led them. Now, this is interesting to me because this is one of the things that I never really stopped to think about earlier on in my consideration of the nature of Yahweh, when it talks about the fact, number one, the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years, according to the scriptures. If they were God's people, well, they were their God's people, but I'm just saying, if he was a God that was going to provide for them, why would he leave them in captivity in a land that was not their own for 430 years? And then when they came out of Egypt, he was going to take them to a land. Now, mind you, he been promising the Israelites this land for almost 1,000 years now. He promised it to Abraham and didn't give it. Abraham didn't have it in his possession, for his progeny upon his death. And then he promised it to Isaac and didn't give it to him. He promised it to Jacob. He renamed Jacob Israel, and they still didn't have it. And he had even told, after promising it to Abraham, and that was the condition of his service: if you will worship me exclusively, I will give you a son in your old age, and I will make your name a mighty people. It took him 24 years to fulfill his promise of giving him a son. And then he turned around and reneged on the deal and told him that his offspring would be enslaved in captivity for 400 years. And they were. But if you think about how long Abraham lived, he lived at like 127 years, I think. Isaac lived 100 and something years. Jacob lived another 100 and something years. So that's 300 years that had gone by, and Yahweh still ain't gave them this promised land. Fact of the matter, he hadn't even told him his name yet. He didn't even tell him his name. Even after Moses went back in and put his life on the line to get the Israelites out of Egypt, they still didn't know his name. And they had been in Egypt for 400 years. They were serving somebody else by then. And he came right back to re-gift this land to him that he still had never gave him, still never cleared the land. He said that I think the Canaanites and the Midianites and the Perizzites and all them were still in the land. When Joshua and Caleb went in to check it out, it was still crawling with Nephilim. He didn't keep his promises, and yet he expected exclusive worship. That tells us a little bit about the nature of Yahweh there as well. Let me see. But he said, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds, when they see war and return to Egypt. Wait a minute. Lest the people change their minds, when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea, and the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt equipped for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you and shall carry up my bones with you from there. And they moved on from Succoth and encamped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from the people. That sounds so wonderful when the preachers talk about it. Jehovah provides for his people. No, he didn't. He was messing with them because he was still mad. He was on some vengeful, petty nonsense. Like you said, the land was nearby. But he led them all around the edge of the wilderness and wandered them through the desert and the wilderness for 40 years for a trip that shouldn't have took no more than 11 weeks. He wandered them around until all the people that he basically, the people that he had made the promise to had died off. And people still think that that's a beautiful thing. I'm like, you know? But anyway, let's continue on. They got past the Red Sea. The part that I was wanting to find here. He gave them manna. It talks about that. He made the bitter water sweet. Talks about that. Israel on Mount Sinai. This is the part. On the third new moon, after the people had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. This is chapter 19. They set out at Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain while Moses was sent up to God. While Moses went up to God. The Lord called him out of the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. No, it wasn't. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. So now, after at least 700 years, he's right back to the same thing. If you'll serve me, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to give you all of this stuff, promising them again. And they still agreed to it, even though they still don't know his name. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all the words that the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered and together and said, All that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. When Moses told the words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. And you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, Take care not to go up to the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot. Whether beast or man, he shall not live. When the trumpet sounds a long blast, they shall come up to the mountain. Now keep in mind, this is Enlil from Nibiru. So actually seeing him is not going to kill you. But this is the big razzle dazzle that he's doing so that he can put forth this show of coming before the people. Why would it take him 3 days? They got to camp around this mountain for 3 days, and then he's gonna show. They can't. He got the velvet rope out. They can't come near the mountain. They can't touch the mountain. They can't come near him. They can't touch him. If they do, they're going to be put to death, just like he did for Nadab and Abihu later on in Leviticus. But why? Because he wants to establish fear and dominance. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, Be ready for the third day. Do not go near a woman. On the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish. Also, let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them." And Moses said to the Lord, "The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, 'Set limits around the mountain and consecrate it.'" And the Lord said to him, "Go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them." So Moses went down to the people and told them. So he's still threatening them. Why do people think that that's cool? I grew up thinking it was because of the because again, I grew up believing in this invisible sky daddy, that the glory of the Lord was so great that you could not bear to see if he showed himself to you, that it would just instantly blind you, or you'd instantly combust or whatever. That's not the case. Yahweh is doing this behind the curtain Wizard of Oz thing and setting up this big show for them so that he can come and address them. But he got to have all this preparation and pomp and circumstance. And even then, he's always threatening them with death, instant death. And we've been so conditioned to that we accept it without question and think that that's a wonderful thing. And then he says, and God spoke all these words, saying, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandment. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and sea and all that is all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land that your Lord is giving you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything else that is your neighbor's. Now, it's fine to covet, and when they're talking about neighbors, they just mean Israelites. It's absolutely fine for Yahweh, as far as they're concerned, to go pillage, plunder, essay, destroy, and everything else surrounding peoples, because they spent a lot of time doing that. Like I said, their name was a stink in the land because of the way their dirty dealings with outside people. But Yahweh is saying, amongst y'all, you can't do these things, even though they still do anyway. But it's interesting with the 6 days. You know who really instituted the Sabbath? It wasn't Yahweh. Didn't even institute the Sabbath. It was Enki. And it was for the Anunnaki when they were working and setting up the base camp and all the rest of that stuff. He said that they worked for 6 days, building, getting the Eden ready, getting the house of life ready, and getting the mining situation together. And they would work hard for 6 days, and then he would give them all a day off on the seventh day. But Yahweh decided to bring that, put that limitation on the people as well, which is fine. They needed a day off, I suppose. But all of these instructions about the Sabbath day, that wasn't Enki's instruction. It was just a day off. They had a 6-day work week when they first got here from Nibiru. Now, when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled, and they stood far off and said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us, lest we die." Moses said to the people, "Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin." The people stood far off while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. So he's telling them straight up, he's doing all of this to keep you scared. Good. You scared? Good. You need to be scared. Because that's the way Yahweh ruled over his people. He kept them in fear. And then he started giving laws about the altars. Now, here's the interesting part. He gives laws about slaves. He's beginning to lay down all these laws with them. He said, "Now these are the rules you shall set before them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve it 6 years, and in the seventh he shall go out free for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, 'I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free,' then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and shall be his slave forever." Say what? First off, later on in the Mosaic law, when we start looking at it, supposedly they weren't even supposed to enslave each other. Slavery was abolished. It had long since been done away with on Nibiru. They knew better as an enlightened, intelligent, developed society. They didn't practice slavery on Nibiru. This was some Yahweh stuff. But he's telling them at first, you can enslave your brother. What part of all that, "thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, thy husband, the oxen, or whatever else"? But now, not only are you allowed to covet him, you are actually allowed to enslave him. But if he comes in single, then after 7 years, he can go free. So it's an indentured servitude. But if he marries while he's in captivity, then if he want to leave, he can leave, but he can't take his wife or his children with him. Where's the love in that? So basically, you're tying his hands. If he actually cares for his wife and children, then he's going to have to agree to be a slave forever instead of being able to work off his indenture and take his family and go have a life with his family. That's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. So he can either struggle through for 7 years by himself and go free. But if he wants a wife during that time, then if he want to keep his family intact, he has to agree to be a slave forever and go through the whole deal of having his ear pierced with an awl nailed to a doorpost so that he can forever wear the symbol of a slave. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has broken faith with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, her marital rights. And if he does not do these three things for her, she shall go out for nothing without payment of money. Why are women being treated like cattle? The men, it's bad enough he doing that to the men, but the women don't have no possibility of freedom, period. If her situation gets so bad that for whatever reason she winds up, her family sells her into slavery, I guess because they can't afford to feed her or they got to pay a debt or whatever, that's it. Her life is done. She is forever a slave with no rights, period. But we choose to serve this being. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death, but if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint you for a place where he may be. But if a man willfully strikes another man, killing him by cunning, you shall take him away from my altar that he may die. So yeah, they had created what they call cities of refuge, and that is for the accidental manslayer. They would be exiled to the city of refuge. If they ever left the city of refuge, the family's appointed avenger of blood had every legal right to go kill them. Okay, I get that can keep peace and law and order, I suppose, but like, really? I'm not gonna read all of the laws because we'll get into them later, but it's just. Now, here, this is an interesting one considering we looked at the story of Dinah last week, where Shechem was so enamored with her, he lay with her anyway, and the Israelites in a dirty deal, and they promised that they were going to make peace with his family, and he came and paid the bride price and said that his father said, we want to make peace with you all so that you can marry our daughters, we can marry our daughters can marry your sons, we want to dwell peaceably in the land. And Israel said, yeah, you can do that, but in order to do that, you're going to have to show us a good faith act of being circumcised. And all the men in that man's family, all of his entourage got circumcised. And while they was laid up on their sick beds, the Israelites came in and unalived them all, took the children and the women, plundered everything, and they took all of their possessions. They literally just massacred these people because this man violated Dinah. It didn't say it was a violent act. It really didn't. And he was so in love with her that he brought all his people and came with a bride price. And they still massacred those people. But yet here, Yahweh lays out the law for the Israelites. If a man seduces a virgin who is not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins. So again, women are not protected. Women are not given no rights, no say so in the matter. I guess back then, like I say, at least if she's considered damaged goods, he could go ahead and marry her. But if he don't want to, he can just pay the bride price and keep it moving. So what's to stop him if he got a decent amount of money? What's to stop him from just taking her anyway? No protection whatsoever for these women. It's interesting because he's talking about you shall not permit a sorceress to live, but he the biggest sorcerer, period. So he the only sorcerer that then showed up in this Bible so far. Because if y'all don't think turning water into blood and bringing frog plagues of frogs up and going up and killing all the firstborn people and causing all turning sticks into snakes and all of that. If that ain't sorcery, I don't know what is. But Yahweh says a sorcerer would not be permitted to live. So he can have those kind of powers, but can't nobody else do it. Right. Y'all tell me something in the chat. I see 8 of you in the room. Ain't nobody talking. No, what's going on? I was trying to get to the part where they were at the foot of Mount Sinai because it does a little back and forth in here. They're describing making the Ark of the Covenant and the altar and all that stuff. And then the priest garments. The golden calf, here it is. So Moses had gone up to Mount Sinai to receive the law from Yahweh. Yahweh wrote the 10 Commandments himself on the tablets, and then Moses was going to write the rest of the Mosaic law, and he took him up in the mountain. He wound up keeping him up there for 40 days. Now, he didn't tell the people he was going to be gone that long. He just said he's going to go up in the mountain with Yahweh, and the people were worried that he wasn't coming back. So it said, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who said, Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. Now, mind you, Yahweh had told them to ask the women of Egypt to give them their gold and silver so that they would have something of value when they're coming out. Now, Aaron gonna take all the jewelry that they collected and put it together and make this altar, or make this idol. And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought up peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed it to it and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation of you.'" If you're going to consume them in your wrath, how you going to make a great nation out of them? And you talking about killing them. This is Yahweh. But Moses implored the Lord his God and said, "O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against our people whom you have brought up out of the land of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, 'With evil intent did he bring them out to kill them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth?' Turn from your burning anger and relent this disaster against your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by your own self and said to them, 'I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your offspring, and they shall inherit it forever.' And the Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing on his people." It was 600,000 of them, and he was threatening to kill them all because he was mad. Then Moses turned and went down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the testimony in his hand, tablets that were written on both sides, on the front and on the back they were written. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, "There is a noise of war in the camp." But he said, "It is not the sound of shouting for victory or the sound of the cry of defeat, but the sound of singing that I hear." And as soon as he came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they had made and burned it with fire and ground it to powder and scattered it on the water and made the people of Israel drink it. And Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin upon them?" And Aaron said, let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people that they are set on evil. Now, Aaron ain't even, he's supposed to be Moses' right-hand man. He ain't even try to talk him out of it or nothing. They said, make us an idol. Aaron said, bet. Now, as soon as Moses come back, Aaron going to go and blame the people. But he was the one that actually made the calf. For they said to me, make us gods, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we did not know what has become of him. And they didn't. He was gone for 40 days with no word, he didn't give them no expectation of how long they were going to be there. None of that. He just left them hanging for 40 days. And so they don't know Yahweh at this point. So they went and made a calf so that they could go back to worshiping the God that they was worshiping in Egypt, or one of them. Probably, if it was a calf, it was probably Moloch, which was still one of his blood relatives. But Yahweh ain't having it. So I said to them, let any who have gold take it off. So they gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Yeah, Aaron, right, all by itself. And when Moses saw that the people had broken loose, for Aaron had let them break loose to the derision of their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, who is on the Lord's side? Come to me. And all the sons of Levi gathered around him. Now, I'm going to remind you, even their daddy, Jacob, Israel, said that Levi and Simeon were violent men, and it was basically going to bring him nothing but heartache. But they're the ones that became the priests among the Israelites. And he said to them, thus says the Lord of Israel, put your sword on each of you, and go to and fro from the gate throughout the camp, and each of you kill his brother and his companion and his neighbor. And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and that day about 3,000 of the people fell. The Lord ain't said nothing about that. He said he was going to kill them all, and he relented from it. But Moses turned around and sicked the Levites on them, and the Levites, with their bloodthirsty selves, went with intention and massacred 3,000 of their brothers and sisters and neighbors. And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and at that day about 3,000 of the men of the people fell. And Moses said, today you have been ordained for the service of the Lord, each one at the cost of his son and of his brother, so that he might bestow a blessing upon you this day. Don't that remind you of what they be talking about when these people in the industry they sell their souls for fame and money and whatever else? And part of that, if they get big enough in the game, they wind up having to sacrifice a family member. And the Levites did that. They went out for blood, for accolade, to show this show of whatever, and kill their family, all of them, so that they could. It wasn't even like I said, Yahweh didn't tell them to do it. They didn't know they was gonna get no reward, but they just that hateful that they went ahead and did it. And Moses rewarded them by declaring the tribe of Levi as the priesthood for the Israelites. This bloodthirsty beasts of men who their own daddy had denounced as violent and shameful. But Moses said, bet you're gonna be the religious leaders amongst us. I'm trying to see. And even after all of that, killing 3,000 of them wasn't enough. Over here in, I think it's verse 25, no, 35, it said, then the Lord sent a plague on the people because they made the calf, the one Aaron made. We ain't even got to the laying down of the Mosaic law yet. And he done already, over the past several hundred years, He done allowed them to come under famine. He done allowed them to have all kinds of military coups and bad relations with the people around him. He allowed them to be taken into captivity in Egypt for 430 years. He allowed the Levites to go in there and decimate their numbers by killing 3,000 of them in one night. And on top of that, he still turned around and threw plagues on them intentionally just because he was mad. Why did these people choose to continue serving him? That should tell you something about their moral character or lack thereof, or their intelligence level or lack thereof, however you choose to say it. And I'm sorry if y'all feel I'm being disrespectful, but no. Who in their right mind would choose to serve this violent, bloodthirsty God when there was all kinds of other Elohim around there? The earth was crawling with Elohim at this point. The Anunnaki texts say it was 600 of them on the earth. 600. And they chose to serve Yahweh, the very worst one of the lot. And his nephew, Marduk, was a very close second. And of all the benevolent, peaceful Elohim, ones who actually loved humanity, who was just trying to get along with it, nope, they had to go and serve Yahweh. And because they chose to serve Yahweh, even down to this day, Christians will say, well, we serve the Father, the God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob. Well, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had some bad taste and bad decision-making abilities, in my humble opinion. But again, when you look at who they were as men and how they moved in the world as men, according to the scriptures, they were not all that honorable of men. Now, they say they were pleasing to the Lord, but they wasn't pleasing to nobody else. So anyway, after that, Moses made new tablets. They renewed the covenant. He starts giving them like Sabbath regulations and all these other things that happen. And that pretty much, then he makes the tabernacle. I'm not going to go through all of that in Exodus because it gets kind of long in there. But when you really start digging into the scriptures to understand the nature of Yahweh and those who chose to serve him, if you just listen to the Sunday sermons when they only cherry pick a verse or two here or there, the preacher remixes it to make it seem like a wonderful thing, and they were so holy and they was the chosen ones of God, and we should emulate that this Israelites, like I said, Paul said we're the Israel of God, and the spiritual Israel and all this other stuff. But when you actually read what the book says, this was some violent, bloodthirsty mess that did not indicate sound decision making, either on a physical level or a spiritual level. Why would you choose to serve a God that from the very gate is dishonest and violent against you? Because he lied and said he made the world. They should have known better than that. Like I said, it was plenty of other gods around there. They can't say that they genuinely thought that Yahweh was the only God and he actually made heaven and earth. No, he didn't. And like I said, that 6-day thing wasn't even his rule. He just took it from his brother and put that in the mix for good measure when he was doing his blowhard, his self-aggrandizing to try to contract these people into serving him. Yep. Well, we ain't getting much activity today, and ain't nobody got too much to say, so I think I'm gonna put a pin in it there. I thought I was gonna get some engagement or interaction with the audience, but ain't nobody saying too much, so I'm gonna stop here at the end of Exodus, and I will be back on Tuesday night, and we'll take up and find something else exciting to talk about. I do thank you for joining me. And until next time, soul family, peace and blessings to you. I love you. Namaste.